Good morning, and welcome back to Live at the Legislature, where every week we sit down with members of the legislature to discuss top-of-mind issues here at the state capitol. I'm Kaeo Aloha Lindsay with the House Minority. Our guests today are Representative Gene Ward from District 17, which spans from Hawaii Kai to Kalama Valley, and Mr. Mike Goodman, who is the director of the Hawaii Kai Homeless Task Force. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we've heard the analogy of the session as sort of like a basketball game, and so we're about in the third quarter now, and we're going to be talking about housing and homelessness today. So, Rep. Ward, what's your gauge on how we've done so far?
Third quarter. What's the score? The score is House 5 and the Senate 4. No, that's we're always competing with them because we're coming to the end where the conference committees come. But in our profession, whether we're House or Senate, we're supposed to underpromise and overdeliver. I think as we look at the score of the session, we've overpromised on two things of which we want to speak about today. We've overpromised in terms of housing. We're still 20 to 30,000 housing units short. And we have overpromised that homelessness was going to be resolved. Now, if we start with housing and why we're not doing this yesterday is because it was Kohio Day. Prince Kohio reminds us, or not about a parade, but so much when in 1921, when the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act was passed, there were 203,000 acres set aside for Hawaiians to be returned to the land, and with that dignity. To this day, we've got about 9,700 homesteaders. We've got 44,000 on the wait list, and we got 203,000 acres, of which to me is a broken promise. So we've overpromised and we've underdelivered on that. And when it comes to homelessness, we've got probably 10 to 15,000 homeless. And we've got the idea that we're going to have everybody get a house, brick and mortar house. And I think we've misled the people to think that we can actually do that. And what we've got are some things that are now at least moving. I think the promise moving in the legislature now is that there are these places where they're not going to be swept. They're Ohana zones, and those legislative pieces are moving. And if you're not going to be swept, you're not going to be sleepless. So sweepless and swepless, I think, is where we're going to be, and we're going to probably make some advantages. And that's where this gentleman comes in with a greater update than I've just given.
And we'll transition to Mike. So you're the author of HB 2014. You've been working with the chairs of housing.
Right.
With that. So we had you on the show, I think the first week, right when session was starting. Yes. So it's been a couple of months. So why don't you update us on where that is?
Okay. Well, first, I want to just backtrack a little bit. The only way to solve the homeless crisis is you have to have a place for all the homeless to go. Not just some, but all of them. And what's been happening is, in Hawaii and around most of the country, is the only way that people are housed is generally in brick and mortar apartments, which are very expensive, run about $450,000 each to build, and usually have rental costs anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a month. Definitely unaffordable for most homeless, definitely unaffordable for the state. So what happens is, in order to house all the homeless in the state, and there are anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000, there might be more, but according to the latest point in time count, it's roughly about 7,200. It would cost the state over $3.5 billion to give everyone a free apartment. And that's not happening. Obviously, it's never happened, it never will happen. So at our bill, the Pu'unoa Homeless Villages Act, HB 2014 does, is it says, let's get off this brick and mortar highway, which isn't going anywhere, and let's use high-tech modular housing that's far less expensive, $15,000 a unit or less, as opposed to $450,000 a unit, which realistically allows us to have a place for all the homeless to go. And if you don't have a place for all the homeless to go, you're still going to have a homeless crisis. We've only housed a small percentage of the homeless, but let's say you housed 50% of the homeless, you would still have a homeless crisis. I'll give you an analogy. Suppose you had a leaky roof in your house, and you decide, I'm only going to fix 50% of my roof because all I can do is afford 50% of shingles. all right, your house is still going to be destroyed by the 50% of your roof that's still leaking. You'd be far better off getting a tarp to cover 100% of your roof, even though it's not an ideal construction material as shingles are. So that's what we're saying. Sure, brick and mortar apartments are the ideal standard, gold standard for sure, but let's have a place for everybody to live first. Let's stop the bleeding and the insanity. You were asking how the bill is doing. Very well so far. Passed the House unanimously. Passed the first sets of committees that it was heard at in the Senate. We're now down to one more hearing at the Senate before it can go before the Senate floor for a vote. Then, of course, it's got to not be vetoed by the governor, so we'll see.
And what has been some of the response from various legislators you've been meeting with and, just reading through testimony in each hearing?
Can I interrupt in
Sure.
that? The response of the public, the Hawaii poll just came out. Overwhelmingly, people see the Pu'unoa villages or the Ohana zones, a place where they can stay without being swept, as a very positive. I think it's 62 or 67%. Legislators have been also equally positive.
Equally positive, yeah. There's a misunderstanding too about safe zones, and I don't know, we don't have time to get into this, about what a pure safe zone is, what a Pu'unoa village would be. Pu'unoa village is permanent housing. It's not a safe zone. It's just made out of different material than wood, brick, and mortar. That's the bottom line. And by the way, Kauaiki Village, for instance, which is a move away from wood, brick, and mortar. In other words, the state is moving in the right direction. It is modular housing, but it's still too expensive. It would cost $2 billion to house all the homeless with Kauaiki Village type residences.
That's the airport village.
Right. Yeah. So they're moving in the right direction, but we've really got to go for modular housing like domes, yurts, and there are many other products out there that could be used in order to house all the homeless.
Representative Ward, final thoughts?
Final thoughts is we are going to deliver some alternative because we don't have the money, nor the time, nor the expectation that people are going to see the homeless problem solved. People are not stupid. They have said homelessness has increased, even though the governor has said, hey, it's decreased. Maybe it's a technicality from the neighbor islands. But the point is, we want to promise something that we can deliver. And I think with the Pu'unoa village, it's an alternative to keep what otherwise is becoming a mutation of which we've totally lost control of. Having said that, I think we're going to deliver something in this session.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for reviewing. We'll see you next week.